Okay, so we're working on the waist casing for the Lillian or the Mama Lily. I also use this construction in the Megan romper and the Millie rompers. So the top is inside out, and I'm going to flip it around. And I'm going to put either your romper or your skirt, whatever you're using for the bottom, inside so the right sides are together. And you can see that I have finished the top of my skirt right here. If you were using a knit, you wouldn't need to do this, but if you're using a woven, you need to finish the top of your romper or your skirt. So I'm just going to match the side seams. And then continue pinning, matching the top. Like this. Okay. Then you need chalk or a fabric pen, some marking tool. And you're going to mark along this edge. Look at your pattern because some of the patterns are different, but this one is 3/4 of an inch. So you're going to measure and you're going to mark all along this seam 3/4 of an inch. Now what you can do instead, which is what I do because I don't like taking the time to mark this, is I just use the marks on my sewing machine to sew a 3/4 inch seam. So you're going to mark it or just sew a 3/4 inch seam here. Okay, so you can see on the back of my machine right here, there's measurements. So I'm just using that as a guide to sew a 3/4 inch seam. And just make sure the tops are together, or the bodice edge and the skirt or romper bottom are together. They're matching. Okay, I'll just continue doing that. Okay, so now I have the skirt or the romper and the bodice stitched together, and you're going to trim just the bodice. So this is the bodice side. You're going to trim that seam down, and this is just so that the waist casing isn't bulky. So I'm going to trim it down about 1/4 to 1/8 of an inch. If you're using knit, you want to trim it a little bit more carefully than if you're using a really lightweight woven, because they're not going to be as bulky in general. So just trim, being careful not to cut your romper or your skirt. You only want to trim the top. Okay, like that. Now you're going to pull your bodice from your bottom. So the top, the bodice is pulled from the skirt just like that, or your romper. Now what we're going to do, see there's your trimmed edge, is you're going to press the seam over that trimmed edge towards the bodice. And this is what we're going to create our casing with. So this seam allowance right here. Now if you're using a woven and you want this to be prettier, or this serged edge is going to bug you or your daughter, you can also press that 1/4 inch or your finished seam towards the wrong side like this. Now you can edge stitch this and then thread your elastic in, but I'm going to show you how I always do my elastic in the round. So I never thread my elastic, and I'll show you that real quick. Okay, so I've cut my elastic piece, and I'm just going to overlap the ends by 1/2 inch, and I'm going to zigzag this on my machine a few times to hold in place. And then you'll have a loop. Flip the elastic. Scooch it up a little bit. I'm going to slip my elastic around the bodice, and I'm going to place it inside my casing. So I'm going to butt the elastic right up to the bodice and the skirt seam, and see, this is going to go over it like this. So let me slip this on here. So again, the elastic is right. Get you closer now. The elastic's going to butt right up to the bodice and the skirt or the romper seam. And I'm going to start stitching right here so you can see what I'm doing. So get your elastic in, push your seam up again. You could have this edge pressed down, but I just like to sew right next to it so the elastic is nice and tight in the waist spacing. You just need to be careful not to sew on the elastic. I use my foot right here as a guide. I just butt that up to next to the elastic. Make sure your straps and everything are out of the way. Let's continue. Once you get to the end, you'll need to stretch your elastic so it's straight as when you're stitching the casing down. You can also do this with knits on your cover stitch. That is a little bit trickier because on the cover stitch you're stitching on the right side, so you just have to feel the elastic. You can't see it, and you can't see if your casing is straight. Okay, see, as we're getting to the end, you're just going to need to tug on your elastic a little bit. You want to make sure that your casing is nice and straight and that your bodice is laying nice and flat. And as you get to the end, you really have to make sure your elastic is right up to that seam. See that right there? Okay, here's the end. You can see how the elastic is really starting to gather up. Now, if you want to leave an edge open and try it on to see if you need to adjust the elastic, you can. This one's for my daughter. If I was doing it to myself, I would take a few inches off the elastic because you are pulling it as you're stitching, and so you're going to lose some of the elasticity of the elastic. But my daughter's isn't. I'm not stretching it that much, so it'll be fine. When you're doing a woman's, a lot of times you're stretching the elastic a lot more. Okay, and then just trim these threads. Okay, so, and then you're just going to stretch so your elastic is even, but you can see that we stitch that casing and the elastic inside in one step, instead of stitching the casing, threading the elastic, stitching the elastic, and then shutting the casing closed. Flip it around so you can see it right side. And if you are doing a knit, it looks really nice when you use your cover stitch. And same as if you use your machine, it just looks really professional.